It's hard to say if every marriage struggles to survive the so-called 7-year itch. In our 7th year of marriage, Olivia stopped having dinner at home and gradually began spending nights away. Even when I was stuck in a hotel during a thunderstorm, she simply replied, "I can't come." At that moment, I scrolled through her junior's latest Weibo post, "Senior sister is the best." The accompanying picture showed the high-end umbrella I had gifted her, and the location was only 900 meters away from me. At that moment, I clearly realized that our marriage had truly come to an end. When I got home, I placed the divorce agreement on the table and left with composure. However, she suddenly began to beg me not to go. The sudden downpour of thunderstorms in the city caught everyone off guard. In the office, everyone hurriedly left, and in the end, I was the only one left in the entire room. Olivia suddenly sent me a message, "It's pouring rain, have you gone home?" This was one of the rare times in 7 years that she took the initiative to text me. I knew she wanted to make amends for what happened a few days ago. Just days earlier, I had been stranded in a hotel after arriving in Haishur, and although Olivia had promised to pick me up, she ultimately stood me up. I showed her a screenshot from her junior, Charlie's Weibo, where her radiant smile was reflected in the lenses of his sunglasses. She shot me a glance and brushed my hand away. "Charlie just arrived from abroad, is there a problem with me going to greet him?" Her gaze swept over me, clearly showing her disdain. "Look at you, disheveled every day, you're the CEO of a company and yet you don't pay attention to your image at all." That day, I returned home in the rain, and because the wind was too strong and the water too deep, I slipped and fell. I quietly watched her, silently putting my phone away, and I didn't speak to her anymore. Since that day, we haven't talked for half a month. In the past, even if it was just a cold war for half an hour, I wouldn't be able to hold back and would immediately message to apologize, frantically admitting my mistakes. As long as Olivia offered a little understanding, I would feel overjoyed and completely excited. Now, there are no more waves in my heart. It's already 8:30. I finished all my work and took a glance downstairs. The security guard at the entrance handed me an umbrella, saying, "Mr. Ethan, it's a thunderstorm today. You should take an umbrella to avoid getting cold." I blankly took the umbrella, and just then, a notification I had been closely monitoring on my phone rang. Curiously, I opened it to find a recent photo from Charlie, accompanied by a caption, "Whenever it rains, there's always someone thinking of you." The image shows a slender, elongated hand holding an umbrella. It is an umbrella that I had custom-made for me in Italy through a friend, with our names, Olivia and mine, engraved on the handle. I had given it to her as a birthday gift the previous year. However, when I first presented it to her, she looked quite disdainful and said it didn't match her style. Yet now, she seems to be using it perfectly well. It's just that it wasn't for me. The raindrops fell heavily, splashing onto my phone. I coldly liked the post and then put away my phone to open my umbrella. "Ethan, you really are pathetic to think that Olivia would bow her head first. In her eyes, Charlie will always come first." I took a taxi home, and the room was pitch black. I quickly took a shower and felt my head start to spin, so I managed to take some medication. My sleep was not very sound, but in a daze, I sensed someone had entered the room and was jolted awake by the sound of the door opening. I squinted and picked up my phone to check the time. It was already 3 in the morning. Olivia had opened the bedroom door and walked over to my bedside. I had never felt the living room lights to be so glaring before, and I frowned as I looked at her. Olivia looked pale as she stood by my bed for a long time. Perhaps she never considered that one day I would fall asleep before she returned home. I felt really uncomfortable, so I turned over and went back to sleep. After a while, I heard her leaving, with faint sounds of washing up. But then, she suddenly pushed the door open with a loud bang, startling me awake from my light slumber. "Did you not leave me any food?" I felt my heart racing rapidly. After a while, under her gaze, I gently asked, "Did you not eat?" She replied softly, and I could detect a hint of grievance in her voice. What was this sudden emotion all about? I turned over and lay down, choosing not to speak further. The next morning, my alarm went off, but I didn't hear it. It wasn't until Olivia beside me impatiently exclaimed, "It's too noisy," that I was startled awake. Feeling my heart racing, I can't shake the thought that one day Olivia is going to give me a heart attack. I scrambled out of bed and, even while washing up, I still felt dizzy. Sure enough, I was running a fever. However, the project I was meeting about today was too important, and I had to be there. My new assistant looked concerned. She carefully handed me some fever-reducing medicine and a towel. "Mr. Ethan, please take the medication first. They shouldn't be in a hurry." I kept my eyes on the contract, but still took the medicine. I didn't pay much attention to the secretary's slightly shy expression. After the meeting, I picked up my phone and saw a message from Olivia that she had sent in the morning before I left. "Who are you putting on a show for with your anger?" I was confused and replied with a question mark. "Have you gotten so lazy that you won't even make breakfast now?" Suddenly, I recalled the questions she had asked last night, and my mood darkened instantly. Ever since I married Olivia, I had mostly been the one cooking. Every morning, I make sure to prepare breakfast, even if we argue or get jealous. I never skip it, even if she doesn't eat. Sometimes, I even go home during lunch to prepare a meal and deliver it to her at the office. However, I occasionally see Charlie in her office, and the way they interact is undeniably intimate. When I get home at night, another argument is inevitable. However, since last night, I have been feeling unwell, possibly related to my mood. But where has she been looking? Can't she see that the stove is cold? I didn't have breakfast either. What's up with her attitude, as if she's used to ordering people around? I frowned and typed quickly, "Forget it, handle it yourself." Then it was another day of continuous work, and it wasn't until after I got off work that I saw Olivia's message, "I'll pick you up after work today." I looked at the pouring rain outside and simply replied with okay. In fact, I didn't have any expectations at all. As expected, when I went out after work, I still didn't see her car at the entrance. Just as I got into the taxi, Olivia's call came through. "Where are you?" Her angry tone and extremely loud voice made me instinctively hold the phone a bit further away. "I'm in the taxi." On the other end, Olivia suddenly took a deep breath. I am very familiar with this. It's a sign that she is about to lose her temper. Surprisingly, she hasn't yet exploded, though. "I told you I would pick you up after work today. But I didn't see your car." "Are you kidding? I waited for you for 15 minutes at the Huaixin entrance." Olivia held back her urge to curse but still yelled at me again. I frowned and said, "Why are you getting upset? We have lived near the startup area for 2 years, didn't I mention that to you before?" Suddenly, there was silence on the other end. It was filled with a sense of panic, as if something had been pierced and shattered. I said calmly, "You should hurry home, it's rush hour now, and there's heavy traffic over there." Olivia didn't even wait for me to finish speaking before she hung up. I couldn't help but twitch my lips. After returning home, I found the lights still on, and Olivia was sitting at the dining table, looking at me. I was taken aback for a moment, as this scene was quite shocking. We had been married for 7 years, and she had hardly ever eaten at home. Throughout these 7 years, I had always been the first one to return home. I could even say that Olivia might not be able to distinguish the switches for each light. In the past, I would cook every day and wait for her to come home, but each time she would say there was something wrong with me. "Is it a crime to have dinner alone? But I don't want you to eat cold food." Am I an idiot? Why would I eat it cold? Olivia stepped forward and dumped all the food on the table into the trash can, even smashing the bowls and plates into pieces. After that, I never waited for her to eat again. I started cooking and eating by myself. When I got home, Olivia surprisingly approached me. She took my bag and closely followed me, trying to explain herself. "Ethan, listen to me, I was just too busy. It's not that I forgot to pick you up." I rolled up my sleeves and walked toward the bathroom while saying, "Yeah, I know." Olivia gave me a strange look. That night, Charlie lived too far away and didn't bring an umbrella. It was dangerous with the thunderstorm, so I just went to deliver an umbrella to him. When I got to his place, it was too late and he hadn't eaten yet, so I just helped him cook a bowl of noodles. It's perfectly normal for a guy not to know how to cook. I nodded in agreement. "Yeah, that makes sense." Olivia then asked, "Are you angry?" I was confused. "No, I'm not." It was as if Olivia suddenly came to a realization, and her expression changed in an instant. The previous uncertainty and guilt shifted to accusation and questioning, and her voice rose sharply, making my head hurt. "I've already apologized. What more do you want from me? I've explained that it wasn't intentional. You're not making dinner or breakfast, so who are you angry at?" It was then that I realized, if this were in the past, I would have immediately taken the easy way out and let it go, or I would have clung to the issue stubbornly, causing an uproar. But my reaction now was too calm, almost unlike me. Or perhaps this is the real me. In the past, whenever I got angry and asked her for an explanation, she would always scold me for having problems. Like a clown who only knows how to stomp around in anger. Ugly, disheveled, and mad. This is why she is unwilling to go home. Yet isn't she the one who started everything? I thought my heart would feel wronged and dissatisfied. But my heart and mind are as calm as a still pond. After working all day with a fever, I was utterly exhausted. I'm going to wash up, I said. Olivia blocked the door, saying, "Let me help you." I pushed her aside and replied, "Get out of the way." Before long, I heard a bang as she slammed the door and left again. We found ourselves in another round of an inexplicable Cold War. In the past, during such standoffs, I would feel restless and plagued by intrusive thoughts, always looking for ways to casually reconcile. Even during the Cold War, I never stopped cooking. I persisted, even if my food was thrown away or given to someone else. Looking back now, I wonder if I was under some sort of spell. Why else would I keep engaging in such thankless endeavors? During those times, I would always be distracted at work, just eager to leave and rush home. Now, I simply feel relaxed all over and fully focused on my work. Especially after being sick, I used to wake up every time Olivia came home late. Now, whether she stays out all night or goes to the guest room, I find it quite convenient. I no longer cook and wait for her. She can go wherever she wants, I only think about my projects. This is a major project I've been following up on for 3 months, and it recently reached the final stages. My little secretary buys my breakfast, I have lunch at the company, and I skip dinner. Days go by quickly. Ever since I got married, I've been completely focused on Olivia. Every day, I say good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and I'm either asking her, "What are you doing?" or "Do you love me?" Pouring all my love into her. Olivia always says she is busy with work. Using work as an excuse, she hardly replies to my messages, but I enjoy it nonetheless. Damn it. I never work overtime, but Olivia has gatherings 3 days a week and big parties 5 days a week, which means she hardly ever has dinner at home and never informs me when she's out. When I stopped revolving around her and her family, I suddenly realized that life is quite wonderful. After successfully wrapping up the project, I finally opened up my social media again. I suddenly remembered that rainy night when I unfollowed Charlie's special updates, but now I found myself wanting to see what they had been up to. The moment I opened it, I saw their group photo. During the period when Olivia and I were on bad terms, he posted almost every day. They went on a road trip, which is the kind of travel I had always wanted before getting married. Charlie also joined Olivia and her friends at their gatherings. In the photos, Olivia was smiling joyfully, and her face made me feel a bit dazed. If it were in the past, these would have driven me crazy. I would have called them over and over again, even showing up around them. At first, Olivia would explain things, but eventually she found my behavior inexplicable. In the end, it turned into a Cold War filled with arguments and slamming doors. After our fights, Charlie often flaunted their photos and sent ambiguous messages to provoke me, further adding to my distress. However, now, as I look at these photos, my heart is completely untroubled. I even find myself liking them one by one. Finally, I stop on one particular image. Charlie is gently holding Olivia's small hand. Those hands have never worn a wedding ring, while I have always been wearing mine. I stared at my hand that had just given a thumbs up, expressionless as I removed my wedding ring. If Charlie wanted it, my withdrawal wouldn't be unreasonable. I had grown tired of it long ago. The project had been completed quite successfully, and the company intended to promote me, but I would have to relocate to the city. I was still hesitating. However, as soon as I stepped outside, I unexpectedly saw Olivia. I took a detour to open the passenger door, but before I could reach the car, the window rolled down, revealing a handsome face. Charlie smiled brightly and said, "Ethan, long time no see. I was just having lunch with Olivia and thought I'd hitch a ride. You don't mind, do you?" I didn't hesitate at all, I just smiled and opened the back door. Not at all. Olivia had been watching my expression in the rearview mirror, and after a moment of hesitation, she spoke up, "Charlie gets car sick." "Yeah, no need to explain. I understand." She glanced back at me with a somewhat peculiar look. "You." I had already taken out my headphones and computer, starting to work, not wanting to pay attention to their trivial matters. Olivia must have found it strange. Between switching songs, I could hear their conversation, filled with topics I didn't understand, but they seemed to be enjoying themselves. However, I could sense Olivia's puzzled and anxious gaze scanning over me. Suddenly, the car came to a stop. It turned out I had arrived home. I knew Olivia was going to see Charlie off, and I gathered my things to leave, but Charlie called out to me, "Ethan, why didn't you come to Emma and her husband's gathering the other day?" I took off my earphones and replied, "Huh? I didn't know about it." Charlie lowered his gaze, looking slightly shocked. "What? You didn't know Olivia and Emma are such good friends?" I shrugged nonchalantly and nodded. It was true that Emma was one of Olivia's close friends and had helped her deceive me on more than one occasion. Whenever Olivia wanted to sneak out to see Charlie or do something without telling me, it was usually Emma who covered for her. The more I thought about it, the worse my expression became, especially seeing the triumphant look on Charlie's face. But I didn't let it show. I just waved goodbye and walked away. Olivia noticed I was leaving without any reluctance and stepped forward, hesitating as if she wanted to say something. I glanced at her and walked away. Last month, Olivia went to the amusement park with Charlie, and Emma pretended to cover for them without a hint of embarrassment, not realizing that I already knew everything from Charlie's social media. I angrily confronted them all, but Olivia never offered an explanation. Instead, she felt I was too embarrassing and left me on the street while she drove back with the two of them. When I got home, I felt completely helpless. She didn't even look at me, packed her things, and said she was going to stay in a hotel. But in the end, I don't know where she went. I returned home, turned on the lights, and collapsed on the sofa with my eyes closed. I made myself a sandwich to eat, but as soon as I stepped out of the kitchen, I saw Olivia sitting upright at the dining table. She seemed to want to say something, but when she noticed the sandwich in my hand, she frowned and asked, "What about mine?" I was puzzled and replied, "Didn't you already eat?" Olivia's expression froze for a moment. She seemed to want to say something but held back. I knew she was hesitating. If it had been earlier, I would have definitely asked her with concern about how she was feeling. But now I'm really hungry and just want to enjoy the game while eating my sandwich. However, just as the game was getting started, Olivia called out to me about that party. We were still arguing, so I didn't. I wondered what she was referring to. Was it really such a big deal? I casually waved my hand and said, "It's nothing, let's just forget about it." Then I turned my attention back to the game. But I noticed a look of shock and panic on Olivia's face. She must have found my words quite familiar, right? Over the past 7 years, I'd heard that phrase so many times that it had become second nature to me. So I blurted it out. Before I was too disappointed in her, I had asked Emma why she lied to me. Emma deflected the question with jokes and never answered directly. Just as I was about to press her for more, Olivia interrupted me, frowning and coldly saying, "It's just a small matter, it's quite amusing that we're still dwelling on it. It's in the past, so let's not mention it." I fell silent, unable to ignore the thumbs up that Emma gave to Olivia under the table. My heart sank. Does Olivia think she has me under control? After finishing the meal, she still didn't show any sign of wanting to leave. I took out the divorce agreement from my bag and said, "Take a look. Is there anything you want to add?" Olivia's expression instantly turned cold. "What do you mean? Do you want a divorce?" In the 7 years since we got married, I had brought up the divorce agreement more than once for her to sign. She never did, and only the first and second times did she seem startled. After that, it was as if she realized I couldn't really leave her and she paid no mind to my displays of frustration. Now that she thought that way, it was only natural. My expression also turned cold as I slammed the divorce agreement on the dining table. I'm serious. I didn't miss the panic and helplessness in Olivia's eyes, yet I felt no satisfaction from revenge. After all, I really did love her. "Can you please stop making a scene?" She still thought I was causing trouble. Suddenly, Olivia erupted in anger and violently threw the divorce agreement against the wall. Seemingly still not satisfied, she ripped a few pages apart and stomped on them. I maintained a calm expression as I watched her make a scene, then turned and walked away. Olivia also turned and left, slamming the door behind her. I didn't care. The next day, when I went to work, I asked my assistant to draft another divorce agreement. "What's your name?" I had never really paid much attention to my colleagues before, as I had always thought that everyone except Olivia was insignificant. Now, I suddenly found the world outside of her to be vibrant and fascinating. My assistant was a top graduate, and as I observed her closely, I realized she was actually quite beautiful. She studied both finance and law, and when she heard that I was getting a divorce, she volunteered to draft the agreement for me. I'm Sophie," she said. I nodded. This was the first colleague's name I had remembered. "All right, then I'll call you Sophie. Once you finish drafting, could you help me look for some housing information in the city?" That day after work, Olivia was waiting for me at the door again. I returned the umbrella that I had forgotten to bring for the past few days to the security guard, who smiled cheerfully and said, "Mr. Ethan, your wife has been waiting for quite a while." I smiled faintly and replied, "Not my wife, but my ex-wife." Olivia's face changed from pale to flushed, and she gritted her teeth, saying from behind me, "I haven't signed the papers yet." I didn't turn around and walked over to the side of her car to open the back door. After she got in, she sensed something was off and turned to look at me, asking, "Why aren't you sitting in the front seat?" I opened my laptop and looked at the property information that Sophie had organized. I must say, that girl is really impressive. She organizes things quickly and efficiently. "It's just a seat, you can sit anywhere." This was something Olivia often said to me before. It's also a phrase I've heard so many times that it just slipped out. After saying that, the two of us fell silent. Olivia lowered her head and said, "Why don't you sit in the front? This is your seat." I didn't want to drag things out with her, but there was a familiar stubbornness in her eyes. I felt a bit dazed. It had been a long time since I'd encountered that kind of look. I knew that if I didn't agree to her, she wouldn't drive, so I moved to the front seat. However, as soon as I sat down, I felt something under my feet. I bent down to pick it up. "Hey! Is this Charlie's wallet?" Olivia paused for a moment and then glanced at my expression. Maybe, it should be Charlie's. He probably forgot to take it with him last time." I nodded slightly. "It's normal. It's not a big deal if something like that falls out of my pocket. You should take it to him later, it's quite expensive," I said. Olivia paused for a moment. "Are you going with me?" I didn't even look at her and returned my focus to the computer. "Why should I go? You can go by yourself." There was no conversation during the ride. When we arrived home, I was about to get out of the car, but Olivia grabbed my arm. "Ethan, there's nothing between him and me. You have to believe me." I brushed her hand away and looked her straight in the eyes. "Olivia, you should know better than anyone how I've changed. I don't care whether you're clean or not, it doesn't concern me at all. What bothers me more is that my time and youth are being wasted on you." Olivia's eyes turned red with every word I spoke. Her voice trembled as she replied. You think you're wasting your time on me?" I continued. "If I hadn't spent so much time on you, I would have already been promoted." I turned and shut the car door, not giving her a chance to respond. Since that day, Olivia has been sticking to me all the time. Except during work hours, whenever she has free time, she makes reservations for us to have meals together. I believe in the principle that it's foolish not to take advantage of a good deal, so I never turn her down. However, I place a divorce agreement on the car seat and the dining table every day. Olivia pretends not to see it, and I don't rush her. I have already wasted a lot of time, so I don't mind a little more. On the other hand, Sophie always checks in on me from time to time. Suddenly, Emma invited me to dinner. I accepted the invitation and wore a full white suit, looking quite impressive. While the dishes were still being served, I unexpectedly ran into Charlie again. He burst in from the next room, exclaiming, "Oh my gosh, it's really Emma and Olivia. I could recognize your voices from the next room." Emma was a bit surprised, but after glancing at Olivia, she responded with a cheerful smile, "What a coincidence." Charlie, as if he just noticed me, was taken aback and said, "Ethan, you're here too." Before I could answer, he turned back to Olivia and said, "Olivia, I want to join you for dinner." Olivia glanced at me, and I nodded while eating a grilled mushroom, indicating it was fine. "Sure, come on over," I said. I even shifted a bit to make some space between Olivia and me. Emma looked at me in surprise, then turned to Olivia. Olivia had a rather unpleasant expression, but I was enjoying my meal. "Olivia, could you please serve me some spicy hot pot?" Before Olivia could respond, he turned to me and said, "Ethan, you know that Olivia hates sharing chopsticks with others, but she never seems to mind when we go out to eat together." I gazed into his eyes, and for a moment, I felt a bit dazed. Olivia has this habit. So our relationship isn't as close and intimate as those of other couples. She really isn't accustomed to sharing utensils. After we got engaged, I asked her to feed me with her own chopsticks at a restaurant. She was so annoyed with me that she nearly flipped the table. Later, I chose not to force her. After all, everyone has their own habits, so why should I make her change? Now I realize it was only because it was me. If it were Charlie, there wouldn't be such a problem. He and Olivia are so close that passersby might think they are a couple. I watched coldly as Olivia, a bit flustered, tried to explain. However, I interrupted, "No explanations, just go home and sign the papers quickly." Charlie and Emma's eyes darted between our faces. I gave Charlie a slight smile. Mr. Charlie, just wait a little longer, soon you'll be able to do so with good reason. The next day, I went to the city to look at houses, and Sophie accompanied me. I left early, and recently I had been sleeping separately from Olivia, which made things quite peaceful. So when Olivia called, I instinctively didn't want her to know I was looking at a place. "Where are you? What's up?" But she quickly picked up on the fact that I wasn't giving a straightforward answer. I asked where you are? "I'm working overtime." Olivia took a deep breath on the other end. "Don't lie to me, I'm right downstairs from your office." I suddenly fell silent. Sophie suddenly started coughing next to me for some reason. "Mr. Ethan. I'm feeling a little." Just then, the agent arrived, and I casually said, "I'm here on a business trip, please don't bother me." These were the same dismissive words Olivia used to say to me, and after hearing them for 7 years, they just rolled off my tongue. Sophie had been following me around all day, and although we hadn't found a satisfying place, I still planned to take her out for dinner in Highshire. Sophie seemed a bit nervous, her cheeks flushed, and her bright eyes kept darting my way. Whenever I glanced at her, I'd quickly look away. I took her out for seafood, and after just a few bites, a few red spots began to appear on her cheeks. I stood there in a daze. "Don't you know you're allergic to seafood?" Sophie scratched her cheek with her finger, looking a bit tipsy as she gazed at me. "Mr. Ethan invited me, I'll eat anything." Then she suddenly fainted. I quickly called an ambulance to take her to the hospital. When I got home, Olivia was sitting on the sofa, and there were some snacks on the dining table. She asked me directly, "Why didn't you tell me about your business trip?" After a long, exhausting day, I felt irritated by her questioning. How old am I? Do I need to inform you wherever I go? That's classic Olivia for you. She fell silent for a moment and quietly said, "I'm just afraid for your safety." She used to stay out all the time, and now she's worried about me being in danger alone. Especially that day when someone was outside trying to pick the lock, making a clear noise. I called her. The noise on her end was chaotic, and she sounded impatient. "Call the police." "What's the use of calling me?" "But, can you come back?" "What good would it do if I come back?" Before I could respond, I heard Charlie's voice on her side, "Olivia, where are you?" Then my call was disconnected. If only she had come back then, it would have shown that she truly cared about me. Now I just find it amusing. Just then, Charlie's call came in, and she answered it in front of me. The entire house was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Charlie's voice came through the line, "Olivia, could you come over to my house? I think there's a mouse in my kitchen, and I'm scared of it." Olivia looked at me, and I waved my hand. "Go ahead, it's dangerous to have a mouse in the house." Her face flushed from pale to red, and in the end, she stepped forward and grabbed my hand. I took a step back, refusing to look at her. Olivia hurriedly left a message, "I will definitely be back before 12. I glanced at the listings again, and when I looked up, it was already 12:30. I felt nothing in my heart. This was just Olivia's promise. It was absurd and ridiculous, yet I believed it for so many years. I pulled out my phone to check Charlie's social media, and sure enough, there was a new post, "No matter what happens, you will always be by my side." Accompanying picture, Olivia's back in the kitchen. As I looked at the picture, I found my eyes welling up with tears unconsciously. The next day, I was awakened by my phone vibrating. One message after another was sent by Olivia. "A mouse really got in yesterday. Charlie seems to have been bitten. I took him to the hospital. I'm really sorry for delaying the whole night. I should have mentioned it yesterday." It felt as if our roles had switched. Now she was the one talking endlessly, while I remained silent and distant. I first went to the hospital to visit Sophie. The little girl blushed and looked at me shyly, saying, "Mr. Ethan is really handsome." I smiled. It had been a long time since anyone had complimented me like that. Ever since I got married, I hadn't paid much attention to my appearance. Sophie was finally able to be discharged from the hospital, and as I was taking her out, I unexpectedly ran into Olivia, who was supporting Charlie. The moment she saw me, she immediately let go of his hand. Charlie nearly stumbled and fell, and I went forward to steady him. Olivia was about to say something, but when she saw Sophie next to me, she immediately questioned me, "Who is she?" I was a bit irritated by her question. "Why do you care?" Olivia stood in front of us, refusing to move, and I could see that her eyes were reddening. "You are still my husband." Before I could respond, Sophie stepped forward. "You still remember that Mr. Ethan is your husband? Yet you feed other men, take them to the doctor, and even catch mice for them. Does that give you the right to neglect your husband for so many years? Now that you think he no longer loves you, are you panicking? Are you afraid? Do you think he has betrayed you? Who do you think you are? You've been indulging yourself outside for so long, and you still can't let Mr. Ethan find a woman who is younger, more beautiful, and more capable than you. With each word, Sophie's confidence grew, and Olivia retreated, her eyes wide in disbelief, before turning and running away. Charlie gave me a meaningful glance before chasing after her. After Sophie finished her tirade, she didn't dare to look back at me. I chuckled softly. That was well said, quite the eloquent speaker. Sophie turned around, her face flushed. That evening after work, Olivia's message came through. Emma and the others are having a gathering, you'll come with me, right? I almost thought I was dreaming. If I had received an invitation like that in the past, I would have jumped for joy. I used to want her to introduce me to her friends, but she always avoided the topic and acted as if I were a stranger. After getting married, I had also wanted to attend, but she never let me go. Women's gatherings are all about gossip. What do you want to go for? I couldn't accept that. I know more than enough, what's there that can't be talked about? I practically begged her to take me. However, when she finally did, she didn't introduce me, which was completely different from how Charlie treated me. I awkwardly sipped my drink in place until it was over. I really didn't understand why she loved Charlie but still agreed to marry me. But now, I had no intention of going to the invitation. As I was contemplating how to decline, Sophie appeared. Mr. Ethan, there's a company dinner. Are you coming? I was charmed by her and nodded with a smile. Then I looked down and declined Olivia. I'm not going to the company dinner. She called me immediately. Is it a guy or a girl? Both. Is that little girl from last time there? I was taken aback for a moment before realizing she was talking about Sophie. I chuckled lightly and said, yes, and she's not much younger than you, so don't call her that. There was silence on Olivia's end. I was tidying up, kept the call on speaker, and didn't hang up, staying busy with my hands. After a long while, she said, have fun. I'll come to pick you up. No need, you must be very busy. Charlie certainly wouldn't miss this opportunity. Previously, during our team dinners, I would ask if there were any male colleagues, and she would impatiently reply that she didn't know them, questioning why I bothered to ask. I'm not your babysitter, how many times do you need to check in a day? Do you really have nothing better to do? You just follow me around all day? I even heard her tell a girl nearby who called out to her. This is a harassment call. My colleagues were all celebrating my promotion, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. I don't know what happened, but originally I planned to go to the city by myself, and now Sophie is coming with me. As I left the private room to use the restroom, I ran into Olivia. Ethan. I was taken aback for a moment, it had been a long time since she had called my name like that. A colleague came out behind me and, noticing our interaction, asked curiously, Mr. Ethan, who is this? I smiled slightly and replied, a neighbor. Olivia's expression darkened, and she looked a bit wronged. I didn't quite understand her intentions again. If she loves Charlie, why did she act so strangely today? Suddenly, I remembered an earlier time when I delivered lunch to Olivia's company and saw her chatting with a group of people. She continued her conversation as if she hadn't seen me. It was only after Charlie asked her that she mentioned, this is Ethan. One of her colleagues teased, wow, he's so handsome. Who is he to you? She casually replied, just a neighbor. That scene quickly flashed through my mind, and once I returned to the private room, the playful atmosphere resumed. By the time we finished, they were still going strong. Olivia asked me to wait for her, but I had lost my patience. Sophie, who is allergic to alcohol, didn't have a single drink. She offered to give me a ride, so I hung up on Olivia right away, saying, a colleague is giving me a ride. Have fun. All she was left with was the sound of the dial tone. Sophie asked me to sit in the passenger seat, and I quietly sat there, looking at the scenery outside. Mr. Ethan, have you not signed the divorce agreement yet? I would have forgotten about it if she hadn't brought it up. I will definitely do it today. Olivia had been calling me repeatedly, but I put my phone on silent. When Olivia hurried back home, I was sitting on the sofa just about to take out the agreement. The anger on her face turned pale in an instant. I saw a timid look in her eyes for the first time. Ethan. I really love you. I can't live without you. Please don't leave. I was truly wrong. I'll change anything you want. I stared at her in silence. Suddenly, she reached out and hugged me tightly, making it hard for me to breathe. Ethan, I have always loved you, I just realized it recently. I will cut ties with Charlie. I'm begging you, give me a chance. Hearing this made me laugh. I unexpectedly pushed Olivia away with such force that even I was taken aback. Olivia, look, you've always known what our issues are. It's really ridiculous. I'm extremely disappointed in you, and now you think you can just change? You truly are disappointing. She seemed to be provoked by my words. No. Ethan, we are the perfect match. How could your secretary be like me? You truly love me. She wouldn't let me speak, and before I could react, she lunged forward and tore up the agreement. I watched her go mad and found it amusing. In the past, I was the one who was so irrational, and now we had both turned into this. Stop. With her eyes red, she halted and looked at me, hoping I would say something to make her stay. You know very well that Charlie is just the trigger, we ourselves are the real problem. Let's get a divorce. You're not suited to be a wife, and I no longer want to be a husband. A flicker of despair appeared in her eyes. Besides, I'm leaving soon, and it might be for a lifetime. You don't have to be so upset. Where are you going? I shrugged and mentioned a mundane matter, and she asked me the time in a low voice. I'm not coming back. She was calculating the business of her company and wanted to go with me. Her voice grew softer, and she looked at me with longing, hoping I would relent. I whispered, Olivia, I really loved you, so please have some dignity. After the divorce, I immediately went to the city. The apartment that Sophie and I rented was right across from Olivia's. Olivia followed me every day in a sneaky manner, but Sophie would openly interrupt her. Later, Olivia boldly started to appear on my regular route to work. I ignored her completely, neither praising nor scolding her, and after a few days, she lost her enthusiasm. Olivia was like a child, any emotional feedback from others served as her motivation. Sophie, troubled by the situation, even arranged to go out with her. Despite being slapped in the face figuratively, Olivia remained persistent and undeterred. That day, she followed me home again and lingered downstairs. I was so hungry that my stomach started to hurt, so I quickly made a bowl of noodles for myself. When she came in and saw how I looked because of the stomach pain, she said, "Let me cook for you. You're in pain, yet you're still making noodles yourself. I used to do everything myself like this," I said disdainfully. Suddenly, Olivia's eyes turned red. "It's all my fault. I should have cared more about you. Charlie asks me for help with every little thing, but you don't say anything at all." I quickly took 2 steps back. "Keep your distance, step back 2 more steps. And besides, I did say it, you just never listened to me." I looked past Olivia, noticing Sophie and Charlie standing behind her. I pushed her slightly. "Go find him, and stop bothering me." As soon as Olivia saw Charlie, she immediately bounced back, jumping onto me like an octopus, while Sophie quickly stood in front of me. Olivia was momentarily stunned and looked at me anxiously. "Are you with her?" Before I could respond, she shouted, "How is that possible? You love me the most. You can only love me." I wrapped my arm around Sophie's and looked at the pouting Olivia with a sense of helplessness. "Olivia, I have my own life now, and you need to move on as well." But she reached out to pull me, her eyes filled with desperation. "Ethan, are you still angry? I knew you were still upset with Charlie. I've already deleted his contact, and I haven't been in touch with him for a long time." I brushed her hand away and couldn't help but chuckle at her stubborn yet self-proclaimed romantic demeanor. "I'm not actually angry with Mr. Charlie at all, I've always been upset with you. You gave him the chance to show off in front of me. You gave him the power to flaunt that he took you away. I'm angry with you, I hate you, and I never want to see you again in this lifetime." Olivia seemed to be taken aback, releasing her grip with a stunned expression. Sophie looked at her nervously. Finally, she slowly let go. I sensed tears glistening in her eyes, but I didn't want to look again. "Olivia, remember this, in the end, it was I, Ethan, who didn't want you anymore.